Let's be honest, you already know what the hard choice is in your life. The earlier alarm, the uncomfortable workout, the difficult conversation, the disciplined spending, the extra hour of study, the decision to stop blaming and start building. You don't lack information, you lack commitment. And until you accept that your life is the result of your repeated decisions, nothing changes. Personal responsibility is non-negotiable because it is the foundation of any meaningful change. Whether your current situation is good, bad, or somewhere in between, it has been shaped, at least in part, by your decisions, your habits, and your responses to circumstances. This is not about blame or guilt, it is about ownership. Blame looks backward and searches for excuses. Responsibility looks forward and searches for solutions. The moment you accept that your actions carry weight, that your daily choices accumulate into outcomes, you step into a position of power. Without responsibility, you are at the mercy of events. With responsibility, you regain control over direction, even if you cannot control every detail. Many people resist this idea because it feels heavy. It is easier to attribute stagnation to unfair systems, difficult people, bad timing, or lack of opportunity. While those factors may be real, they do not eliminate personal agency. You may not have chosen your starting point, but you are choosing your response to it every single day. Responsibility means asking hard questions. Are you managing your time with intention? Are you following through on commitments? Are you developing skills that increase your value? Are you taking care of your physical and mental health? These questions are uncomfortable because they remove the illusion that progress is someone else's job. When you treat responsibility as optional, your standards drop. You begin negotiating with yourself. You justify procrastination. You explain away inconsistency. Over time, those small compromises become patterns, and patterns become identity. On the other hand, when responsibility is non-negotiable, your internal dialogue changes. You stop saying, "I'll try," and start saying, "I will." You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start working with what you have. You understand that discipline is not a personality trait reserved for a few, but a decision repeated daily. Personal responsibility also strengthens resilience. When setbacks occur, and they will, you do not collapse into self-pity. Instead, you assess, adjust, and continue. You recognize that while you cannot control every outcome, you can always control your effort, preparation, and attitude. This mindset builds credibility with yourself. Each time you follow through, you reinforce the belief that your actions matter. And once you believe that your actions matter, you stop living passively and start building deliberately, even when the process is slow, uncomfortable, or inconvenient. Discipline over emotion means recognizing that feelings are temporary, but consequences are lasting. Emotions shift throughout the day. Motivation rises and falls. Confidence fluctuates. Energy dips, and comfort calls for ease. If your actions are dictated solely by how you feel in a given moment, your progress will always be unstable. Acting only when inspired creates inconsistency, and inconsistency weakens results. Discipline, on the other hand, creates stability. It allows you to execute tasks, uphold standards, and move forward regardless of mood. This does not mean ignoring emotions entirely. It means refusing to let them become the authority over your behavior. Feelings can inform you, but they should not control you. Many people misunderstand discipline as harshness or restriction, but in reality, it is structure. It is the decision to do what needs to be done, even when comfort suggests otherwise. When you wake up tired and still choose to train your body, that is discipline. When you feel distracted but remain focused on meaningful work, that is discipline. When you want immediate pleasure but prioritize long-term stability, that is discipline. Emotions often push for relief in the present moment, while discipline protects your future. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is often filled with tasks that are repetitive, uncomfortable, or boring. Waiting to feel ready to do them usually means they never get done. Emotional control is not about suppressing frustration, fear, or doubt. It is about responding intentionally rather than reacting impulsively. When you allow anger to dictate your words, you damage relationships. When stress dictates your habits, you abandon healthy routines. When boredom dictates your focus, you drift into distraction. Discipline interrupts these patterns. It creates a pause between feeling and action, giving you space to choose behavior aligned with your goals instead of your impulses. That pause is where growth occurs. It is the difference between short-term satisfaction and long-term achievement. Over time, choosing discipline over emotion strengthens your identity. You begin to trust yourself because you follow through regardless of mood. You no longer depend on motivation to perform. You understand that motivation is unreliable, but standards are not. By committing to consistent action, especially when it feels inconvenient, you train your mind to value results over comfort. This builds resilience, sharpens focus, and increases your capacity to handle pressure. As you repeatedly act in alignment with long-term priorities instead of temporary feelings, your confidence becomes rooted in evidence rather than emotion. Resilience is built through discomfort because growth only occurs when you are stretched beyond what feels easy or familiar. Comfort maintains your current capacity. Discomfort expands it. Every time you choose the easier path to avoid stress, pressure, or uncertainty, you reinforce fragility. But when you deliberately face difficulty, whether physical, mental, or professional, you strengthen your ability to endure and adapt. Resilience is not a personality trait that some people are born with and others lack. It is developed through repeated exposure to challenge. The discomfort you experience while learning a new skill, pushing through fatigue, handling criticism, or recovering from failure is not a sign that something is wrong. It is evidence that you are operating at the edge of your current limits. Avoidance feels protective in the short term. Skipping the hard task, postponing the difficult conversation, or quitting when results are slow provides immediate relief. However, that relief comes at a cost. Each avoided challenge subtly lowers your tolerance for stress. Over time, even minor obstacles begin to feel overwhelming because you have trained yourself to retreat rather than endure. Discomfort, when approached intentionally, reverses that pattern. When you stay with a demanding workout instead of stopping early, you teach your body and mind that strain is survivable. When you persist through complex work instead of switching to distraction, you expand your focus. When you accept feedback without defensiveness, you strengthen emotional control. These small acts accumulate into a higher threshold for pressure. Resilience also requires perspective. Discomfort is often interpreted as danger, when in many cases it is simply effort. The tension before a presentation, the fatigue during disciplined training, the frustration of slow progress, these sensations signal exertion, not harm. Learning to distinguish between productive discomfort and genuine risk allows you to lean into growth without unnecessary fear. This mindset transforms obstacles into training grounds. Instead of asking, "How do I avoid this?" you begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift increases your adaptability and reduces panic when circumstances change unexpectedly. The more you expose yourself to manageable hardship, the more stable you become under pressure. You develop confidence not from ease, but from evidence that you can withstand strain. Challenges no longer feel like threats to your identity. They become opportunities to refine it. By consistently choosing to confront rather than escape difficulty, you cultivate a resilience that carries into every area of life, reinforcing the understanding that strength is not built in comfort, but in controlled adversity. Physical and mental self-control create freedom because they reduce impulsive behavior and increase intentional living. Without control over your body and mind, you are constantly reacting to cravings, distractions, moods, and external stimuli. Freedom is often misunderstood as the ability to do whatever you want in the moment, but that kind of freedom usually leads to chaos. Real freedom is the ability to choose what is beneficial over what is immediately gratifying. When you can regulate your eating, sleeping, movement, attention, and emotional responses, you are no longer driven by impulse. You begin operating with clarity and direction rather than habit and reaction. Physical self-control starts with simple standards: consistent movement, disciplined nutrition, adequate rest, and moderation. These are not extreme practices. They are foundational ones. When you neglect your physical health, your energy declines, your focus weakens, and your emotional regulation suffers. Fatigue makes discipline harder. Poor nutrition clouds judgment. Inactivity lowers resilience. Over time, lack of physical control limits your options because you feel too drained or unmotivated to act. By strengthening your body through routine and restraint, you increase your capacity to handle stress, maintain productivity, and sustain effort. Energy becomes an asset rather than a limitation. Mental self-control is equally critical. Your attention is constantly targeted by distractions, notifications, entertainment, noise, and endless information. If you do not guard your focus, it will be fragmented. A A fragmented mind struggles to produce meaningful work. Mental control means directing your attention deliberately, limiting unnecessary inputs, and managing your internal dialogue. It involves pausing before reacting emotionally, questioning negative assumptions, and choosing constructive interpretations. Without this control, minor frustrations escalate, criticism feels personal, and setbacks become discouraging. With it, you maintain perspective and respond proportionally rather than impulsively. Self-control also builds trust within yourself. Each time you resist a distraction, complete a difficult task, or regulate an emotional response, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of directing your own behavior. That belief increases confidence rooted in evidence, not ego. As your control strengthens, your choices expand. You are less controlled by cravings, less dependent on validation, and less influenced by external pressure. This creates stability in uncertain environments. You are able to act according to principles rather than impulses, to pursue long-term goals without being derailed by temporary discomfort, and to design your life around deliberate standards instead of reactive habits. Consistency beats intensity because sustainable progress is built through repetition, not bursts of effort. Intensity feels productive. It creates a sense of urgency, momentum, and visible action. But intensity without consistency fades quickly. Many people experience short periods of extreme motivation, strict routines, ambitious goals, long hours of focused work, only to abandon them once energy drops or obstacles appear. The result is a cycle of starting and stopping, which creates frustration and uneven growth. Consistency, by contrast, may look less impressive in the moment, but it compounds quietly. Small actions performed daily reshape skill, character, and outcomes over time. Intensity relies heavily on emotion. When motivation is high, output increases. When motivation declines, effort disappears. Consistency does not depend on mood. It is built on predetermined standards and routines that operate regardless of emotional state. This steadiness reduces internal negotiation. Instead of debating whether to act, you follow through because it is part of your structure. Over months and years, this approach creates measurable improvement. A moderate workout performed 4 times a week for years will outperform sporadic extreme training. Focused work done daily will surpass occasional all-night efforts. Financial discipline applied consistently will outweigh short-term aggressive saving, followed by careless spending. Consistency also builds identity. When you repeat a behavior regularly, it becomes part of how you see yourself. You are not someone who tries to be disciplined. You are someone who shows up. Identity formed through repetition is durable because it is evidence-based. Each completed action reinforces the next. In contrast, intensity often leads to burnout. When standards are unrealistically high and unsustainable, failure feels inevitable. This weakens confidence and increases the likelihood of quitting. Consistency protects against this by setting achievable expectations that can be maintained long-term. Progress in any meaningful area, health, career, relationships, skill development, requires time. Time amplifies what you repeat. If your efforts are inconsistent, results remain unpredictable. If your efforts are steady, even if modest, improvement becomes reliable. Consistency also strengthens resilience because it trains you to continue despite boredom, slow progress, or lack of recognition. It removes the need for dramatic transformation and replaces it with disciplined persistence. By committing to manageable actions performed repeatedly, you create momentum that no single intense effort can replicate, gradually shaping outcomes that reflect sustained commitment rather than temporary enthusiasm. Truth before comfort means choosing honest self-assessment over soothing explanations. It requires the willingness to confront facts about your behavior, habits, performance, and results without immediately defending yourself. Comfort protects the ego. Truth develops the individual. When something in your life is not working, your finances, your health, your discipline, your relationships, the most productive response is not to rationalize it, but to examine it accurately. That examination can feel uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It highlights gaps between intention and action. It exposes inconsistency. Yet without this clarity, improvement remains vague and unfocused. Many people prefer narratives that reduce personal accountability. It is easier to say progress is slow because of circumstances rather than insufficient effort. It feels better to attribute underperformance to external factors instead of preparation or discipline. Comfort-driven thinking softens reality, but it also blocks growth. If you misdiagnose the problem, you cannot apply the correct solution. Truth, even when uncomfortable, creates precision. It allows you to identify exactly what needs adjustment: your time management, your skill level, your consistency, your focus. This precision increases efficiency because you stop wasting energy on denial and start directing effort where it matters. Truth also strengthens emotional stability. When you become accustomed to honest evaluation, criticism feels less threatening. Feedback becomes information rather than an attack. You begin to separate your identity from your current performance. This separation allows you to acknowledge weakness without collapsing into self-doubt. Comfort seeks validation. Truth seeks progress. The pursuit of comfort often leads to environments where standards are lowered to avoid discomfort. The pursuit of truth leads to environments where standards are clarified and upheld. Over time, this difference compounds into significant divergence in results. Choosing truth requires discipline because it demands ongoing reflection. It involves reviewing your actions regularly and asking whether they align with your stated goals. It means measuring outcomes instead of relying on assumptions. It means admitting when effort was insufficient or when priorities were misplaced. While this process can challenge your ego, it builds credibility with yourself. You gain confidence not from praise, but from alignment between what you say and what you do. As you repeatedly prioritize accurate self-evaluation over temporary reassurance, your decisions become sharper, your standards become clearer, and your growth becomes intentional rather than accidental. The direction of your life will not be decided by motivation, luck, or intention alone. It will be decided by the standards you refuse to lower, the responsibilities you accept without excuses, and the actions you repeat when no one is watching. Growth is rarely dramatic. It is built in ordinary moments. When you choose discipline over comfort, truth over denial, consistency over intensity, and effort over complaint. You do not need a new year to begin, but as 2026 approaches, you do need clarity. Decide what kind of person you are becoming. Decide what habits you will no longer tolerate. Decide which hard choices you will commit to daily. Then follow through quietly and consistently. There is no shortcut around the work. There is no substitute for self-control. There is no progress without responsibility. But there is power in knowing that your future is shaped by what you do next. Start today. Stay consistent. Raise your standard.